I was feeling really behind because I felt like the people I was competing with for these entry-level jobs were coming from an Ivy League school with a computer science degree. They're obviously going to choose them over me.
The world is obsessed with fast-track success. It's easy to think that people become successful overnight. But let's face it, more often than not, what we see on social media is total BS. I'm here to look past the perception of perfect success and focus on life's detours, perceived mistakes, and even wrong choices, and understand the real road traveled up the career ladder. After all, we're all effing up. Ashley Chang is the co-founder and CEO of Sundays, an executive assistant service for working parents. Ashley is on a mission to accelerate parents in their careers while creating more quality time for family. Before starting Sundays, Ashley worked in the technology industry across all stages of companies. She was the first employee at a developer tool company called ReadMe and helped scale Carta's venture capital business from 10 to 100 million plus. Ashley, welcome to Effing Up. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jan. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't we start by you sharing about your current work with Sundays?
You're building an executive assistant service for working parents. Our goal is to help parents get more focused time at work and more quality time with their families. My long-term goal is to get more moms into leadership positions so they can rethink how we think about the balance between family and work.
That really resonates. Having been in leadership, I'm not currently in the corporate world. I'm doing the podcast. I'm with my kids 24/7. And the idea of going back to corporate, it's like an immediate wave of anxiety. Managing care and coordination of the kids feels overwhelming. Do you focus on the personal side of helping the family, or what does that look like?
We do both. About 50% of our clients are just family-only clients. So they're usually people who have more corporate jobs. They work like 9 to 5 and they have young kids. So we help with life ops, all the things it takes to keep their family running, which is coordinating care, but also finding a new in-network dentist and actually scheduling that appointment and making all the calls that have to happen during business hours. We also help women who have left corporate roles and are starting their own businesses. They might have started a startup or consultancy. We'll be their right hand. We'll do traditional EA stuff like calendar and email management, some operations, and really support them holistically because their to-do list has a mix of family and work stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have children.
I don't have kids yet. I'm hoping to in the next few years.
I find this fascinating because generally speaking, people that don't have kids are like, no, I don't want to touch the thing with kids. Let me preserve my singleton status while I can. And you're diving in and helping a group of people that you're not a part of yet. And I find that so fascinating and inspiring. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, definitely a piece of it is like the type A planner for me, where I'm like, I do want that in a few years. What is it going to take to make it possible?
Let me make sure this is perfect when it's time for me.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. And then the other part for me, my mom, she was a computer scientist in the 80s, and she had a super promising early trajectory to her career. And then as she had us, I'm the oldest of 3 girls, she felt like she really had to choose between work and family. She decided to stay home, which I'm super grateful for. But I feel like she missed out on some of her own opportunities for other things that could have been fulfilling to her and also could have contributed to the world because she had so many skills in different ways. And I've actually collaborated with her on a few different projects. And then she's helped Sundays for a little bit of our engineering too. So she's still an awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I entered this tech industry about 25 years later. I was in product management mostly. And so working with engineering team in that area is very male heavy, very few women there, very few women in leadership. And then the longer I stayed in the tech industry, the more I saw women in the same generation as me making the same or feeling like they had to make the same choice. And I just think it's pretty crazy that every piece of technology we use today, like this microphone and laptop, are all invented in the last 30 years, but so little has changed in the way we think about family and work. And I think now's the time to change that.
You started to dive into your past, and I'd like to double click on that. When you think about your career holistically and little Ashley, are there experiences or themes that informed your career good, bad, indifferent?
I'm the oldest of three girls. I don't have any older cousins or anyone paving the way for me. Even as a kid, found myself like just put in these situations where I have to like figure out how it works. And so I got not necessarily comfortable, but definitely more comfortable, I think, than others in being in these like uncomfortable situations where I have to like figure out how things work and figure out how to be successful. And I think that has followed me through my whole career. My dad has been an entrepreneur forever. Everyone besides me and my family is an actual engineer. So my dad is a mechanical engineer, makes medical devices. I saw him throughout my childhood working at really small companies that he often started and trying to build these things from scratch and seeing sometimes it was successful, a lot of times it was not successful, but seeing that process and understanding it is okay to take risks was really helpful. The third thing is I had a lot of experience with caregiving as a kid. My mom, I think she was an accident baby. Her parents had her when they were old for that time at least. She has two brothers, 20 years older. When I was little, my grandparents were aging. My grandfather had a stroke and he was in a wheelchair for the rest of my childhood. And then had a series of heart attacks. I have these distinct memories of like calling ambulances and having people come to the house and like spending a lot of time at hospitals, supporting my mom, the lead caregiver among her siblings. So supporting my mom and balancing emotionally what that is, plus all of the actionable coordination and taking care of our family as well. So just saw a lot of the toll that it takes to be a caregiver and how much energy and time it takes.
That's a lot to witness as a child.
Yeah, it definitely had an impact on me as a child, how I thought about what's important to me and what I wanted to do.
You mentioned your dad was an entrepreneur, sometimes doing really well and sometimes it not working out. When the times that the things that he was working on did not progress and maybe go the way that he thought they would, did you ever look at him as a failure? Or were you like, oh, cool, he's trying something new again? What was that from your vantage point?
I definitely never looked at him as a failure. I saw like a bunch of different companies. So like he had certain companies or like a couple companies he worked at would grow to be like a couple hundred people and then they would have to shrink back down again because it didn't actually work. Sometimes they were really small companies and then he had one or two that were successful and got acquired by other businesses. And then in between those companies, a lot of times he would just have time off or he would be home with us, which was really cool. I got really good at softball one year. He didn't have a job. It wasn't like we're like mortgaging or taking out a mortgage on our house and like doing really high risk things. So it wasn't like our family was super affected. So I think that was a good learning too of there's a balance between what are the basics that you need to maintain. And then I think that he just treated it as a learning experience, which I appreciated. Even one time he ended up being in charge of closing down a company. And so he had to lay off everyone and then do all the logistics of moving them out of their office. And they were like 5 people and then 3 people and then just him. And he was talking through how those conversations were going with people and stuff like that. And I think his perspective was it's really sad, but it's not the end of the world. Like we're trying to create something and it didn't work, but that's okay.
So I was trying to lead you, hoping you would give the answer you gave. And the point being that your dad may have had feelings of failure during that time, but you as his child just saw him hustling. Just saw him saying, you know what? It's not going the way I think, but I'm making the most of it. If this doesn't work out, next thing. And lesson of this podcast, it can feel so all-consuming, like things are tanking, life is going to be ruined. And then with experience and age and time, you realize, no, that was just a blip in the whole.
And like from your kid's perspective, they're like, oh, I get to spend more time with my parents.
Right.
Like,
exactly. What was the theme in regards to higher education and whether or not you should pursue it, or did you feel pressured?
I definitely think the default for me was going to college. I didn't get into the colleges I wanted to go to, which was a bummer. I feel I have always done this thing where I choose the hardest path. And then if you're in high school, it actually makes sense to, at least in my school, it made sense to choose slightly easier classes that would give you a higher GPA. But I didn't do that. I took all the AP classes and sometimes I got B's instead of A's. When I was applying to college, I was definitely like disappointed because I didn't end up getting into a lot of the schools I wanted to. But I was going to go. I didn't have pressure to choose a specific area, although as I said, all the rest of my family are engineers. It wasn't like real pressure. I guess my sisters chose engineering. Maybe they felt something, but I I knew that I can do math, but math is not my favorite thing. So engineering was not going to be like my main thing. I studied genetics in college. I was really interested from my dad's medical device side. And then I just really liked biology. I had a really good bio teacher in high school. I think that affects a huge number of people what you study. And I wanted to know how things work, what makes people how they are. And so I studied genetics, which I loved from a like learning perspective. But the longer I was in college, the less I was like, this is something I actually want to do the rest of my life.
When you chose it, what did you envision would be the career that came out of it?
I don't know if I really envisioned a career. My school was very academic leaning. So all the paths that they would highlight are like, you go into academia and you work in a lab and you do research. There wasn't really highlighted like, how do you get into, there was like a business club or something like that, but it wasn't like, these are real jobs that people do like companies. I was studying genetics and I liked that, and then I did work in labs, but the more I worked in labs, the less I liked it. I like talking to people and you're not supposed to in a lab.
Yeah.
So
Radio silent. This is not going to work.
you read your papers and it was like, this does not feel like it's for me. I was applying to all these internships and I had a moment during my junior year of college. It felt like you really need to figure out what you're going to do. Like you should intern in what you want to do. And then you're going to go work in that after college. I was applying to lab internships and not getting any. I was super stressed. I was having like all these stomach issues where I couldn't sleep because I was like so stressed about
you were strung out.
Yeah, I was like, what am I going to do with my whole life?
This comes up in almost every recording with a guest.
Yeah.
About this time of life, either that period in high school, end of high school, or you got to figure out what's next, or that period end of college. Most people struggled. It's just so wild to me. But the high school timeline, it's okay, you barely have your driver's license and we're expecting you to know about your future. What's your major? What are you going to choose? But the college timeline, it's like you can barely legally have beer, but figure out the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's just the pressure we put on our youth to say, you need to know it all right now. And that carries with you. So no wonder in your 20s, you're like, is this as good as it gets? Am I doing something wrong? I should be so successful. What? No, again, you just barely started drinking beer.
Yeah.
How do you know what you want to do with the rest of your life? It's so insane.
It is. Also, you're not exposed to most things you could be doing. And you're like, I only knew about academia and I was like, I'm failing at this one path that is the only path I can do. And
we need to, as early as kindergarten to fourth grade, be like, here are all the job types. Not just here's a teacher, doctor, and a lawyer. There are 5 million jobs out there. So many you have no clue exists. You just somehow happen upon it because you meet someone or hear some story and you're like, light bulb moment, what? That's a job?
I know a couple people who like in their late 20s have gone to a career counselor basically and they've redirected them into a career path that they had no idea about that they now love. And I think that's so interesting.
Anyway, I digress. We could go on. As you're approaching end of college and thinking about a first job, what does that experience look like? How did that go?
I basically didn't get any of these summer internships. And then that's how I ended up I worked at WotC like for the summer, for that junior summer, which I basically had. WotC is they do crowdfunding for healthcare in developing countries. They're a nonprofit startup. So they had just gone through Y Combinator and I had just heard about that. They had good marketing. So I had heard about them on the internet and I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I want to start a college club for WotC and see if we can contribute to this nonprofit cause. They reached back out to me and they're like, we're actually looking for summer interns. Do you want to help us? That's how I started at WotC. I joined as they had all these volunteers. So I was like, and this was not paid, but I was coordinating like all the volunteers for them. But I got to go to work with the team every day or like a few days a week. They were sharing an office with another for-profit company that was like growing really quickly. So I went into this office with young tech people all summer. From WotC, I learned tech is really cool. You can make an impact quickly. I saw other companies in the space that were growing quickly. This is exciting. Like people are moving faster. I really like being able to make an impact quickly. And that was one thing I really struggled with in the lab work was that it could have a big impact, but it would be like 30 years down the line. I liked that in tech, I could do something today and it would help someone tomorrow. You can do that at scale rapidly. So I got really excited about that. And then I continued working with WotC throughout the rest of my senior year and did more medical focused stuff with them. As I was graduating college, I would have loved to continue with WotC, but they are a nonprofit, so they just didn't have any money to hire people. And I was like, okay, I want to go into tech. What does that mean? I knew about Y Combinator, so I started looking at like recent companies that had gone through there that might be hiring entry level people. I moved back home with my parents for the summer. I was like applying to all of these jobs, like just submitting resumes, but I had no background in technology. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was feeling really behind because I was like, I felt like the people I was like competing for these entry level jobs were like, I was like, oh, everybody's like coming from an Ivy League school with a computer science degree. They're going to choose them over me. I wasn't having a lot of confidence going into it. One of the people I met started his own company during my senior year. I met up with him just to catch up, and he was telling me how things were going. He's working on it on his own, had some funding. I basically was like, I can help a couple of days a week and see what I can do to be helpful. I started helping him with anything he needed, which was like
Okay.
for pay. Yeah. So he was paying me, but part-time. He had 600 customer support requests that he had just not answered because he was building he was an engineer. So I was like, I'll knock out all of these requests. And so I would like answer like ones that were simple, I would answer myself. And then I would save up the ones that I didn't know the answer to. And then the cool thing about doing that is like over time, you quickly learn how the product
That's
works
the
and stuff.
best way to learn a product. Yeah.
I did that for a couple of months, and then I did start getting some interviews, but these jobs seem like really narrow. Every job was like, you will be answering customer support, but that's all you'll be doing. As I was learning more about ReadMe, I was like, is this cool? Like I can do whatever I want, like whatever needs to be done, and I can define what needs to be done because I'm like listening to customers.
Yeah.
So I approached the founder and I was like, hey, like I would actually like to stay here if you're open to it. And he said yes and offered me a full-time role. So I stayed for 3 years.
Did more employees come during that time? Was it just
Yeah.
the two of you?
By the time I left, there were 10 or 12 people. We hired 2 more people. So there were 4 of us for a while. I got to help hire all the people. It was mostly engineers. I got to be involved in creating the culture of what it meant to work at this company and how we treat each other and how we set goals. I definitely wouldn't have gotten to do if I had gone to one of those bigger companies.
I've been a part of a few startups at a very early stage, and that is such a magical time. It's fun to grow big and do good things and blah, blah, blah. But just the early days when it feels so hard and so impossible. And I always equate it to like being a group of penguins in Antarctica where you're just like sheltering through the cold and you're like figuring things out and you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
When you advance and the company is starting to do better and you look back and it's just, you can't help but just love those old days and wish you could have them again, even though you just wanted to get out of it. What made you leave?
I reached this point where I just felt like I wasn't like learning as much. I like to feel like I'm moving quickly and I feel like I've hit this like stagnant place, which sometimes it's on you to move yourself out of that. At the time, it was cool because it was a profitable company. So we were going to raise more money. We weren't evolving quickly in terms of roles for me to do. I think if you were on the engineering team, there was more interesting stuff, but I've learned how to like run product at this company. I've learned how to do all of these other things that it takes to run a company. And I was also I was calling myself a product manager, but I was like, am I a real product manager? Like I taught myself how to do this. I don't really know if I'm doing it right. I wanted a bigger company experience. I wanted to be like, what is it like to be at a real company? Because I had been at such a small company for so long. Yeah.
How did the founder feel when it came time to give notice?
He was definitely bummed. I wish I had done it better. I wish I had given him more notice and been like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I did it traditionally. I found another job and then I told him, but I wish I had been upfront because we were good friends. So I wish I had just been like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. But I think at the time I was like, I don't want to like make him sad or disappoint him.
Sure. Leaving a job puts on a whole new type of pressure and makes you make decisions and think about life in a very odd way during that time frame. You run and operate a lot out of fear because there are a lot of what ifs.
Yeah, definitely. And for that company specifically, it was like they had become like that group of people had become like my closest friends because I had just moved to San Francisco. Most of the other people were also new. It was a big mixture of personal and work lives. It was a step away from that.
Are you still friendly with them today?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm still friends with all
So
of
it didn't end too badly.
It didn't end too badly. No, I think there was like a period of time where I felt disconnected, but I think like longer term, we've definitely all stayed in touch.
It looks like you went to Collective Health. How did you land there?
I was looking to get into tech and healthcare, like a combination of the two. I was on this distribution list for women in product, and people would post jobs and then they would also post like the email of the hiring manager.
Mm.
And because they were like specifically looking for women to join their teams, the hiring manager at Collective posted on it and had his email there. So I just sent him an email and I was like, I'm looking for this job. It was like a tough job search process because I was coming from a company that no one had ever heard of. And I think that a lot of times when people are filtering through applications, they're just like looking for things that they like names they know.
Actually, tech has historically been word of mouth. Who do you know?
Yeah.
Reputation based. And if you're not familiar with the company, that just doesn't feed into that ethos.
Yeah. That was another reason I wanted to go to a bigger company. I had 3 years of going to events, you'll be like, I never heard of that company. And then having to explain
You
it, like, I wanna
wanted
go.
some cred.
Yeah. When people are looking at resumes like, where they don't know a person, the name recognition is helpful.
Yeah, I get it. When you're early in your career, you're looking to build it. How can you build it as big as you can, as fast as you can? What learning curves did you encounter at Collective Health?
It was a big learning curve. I think Collective was like 500 people when I joined.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big change. And things were changing quickly there too. I got hired to be a product manager on one team. I was supposed to report to this guy. He was really great, but he ended up leaving like 2 months after I joined. So then I ended up taking over all of his team. So it was really hectic first couple of months. I was ramping up really quickly on how to work with this engineering team. What's the context of what this business does? What do all these other teams do and how do they work together? And a lot of it I had read about theoretically when I was trying to learn product management myself, but I hadn't in reality done that much of it. Even though when I was interviewing, I was like, yes, of course, I'm a true product manager. And like, have us like, obviously, obviously in this 12-person company, we run like scrums and they're perfect. But anyway, you have to talk up, I think, and hear their views.
When you first joined, the first few days, the first few weeks, what did it feel like going from this 4-ish person company where you were self-taught mostly to now 500 people around and built-in structure? How did it feel?
I felt like I needed to prove myself. It was overwhelming, but I was like, I can figure this out. But I felt like I needed to do a lot of work to prove myself and catch up. I have like distinct memory. I knew SQL, which is like a database language, but not extensively. And the person, like the mentor person who was there for 2 months, like, I remember on my second day, he was like, can you write some queries to find data? I started working on it, had to ask him some questions, and I ended up staying there like really late because I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. And eventually, I think I did get to an answer that seemed reasonable, and I was like super proud of myself. But I remember there being like a lot of days in the beginning where I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. Also, I ended up being the product manager for this engineering team that had been together for a long time, and they were pretty senior. I was really nervous because you're supposed to come in and be like running the team, when I was like just very tentative. I remember feeling I needed to do so much prep work ahead of time. How am I going to present this? Do I know all the details?
Feel supported, or like that team of engineers, do you feel like they were judging you? What did it feel like?
They were actually really supportive. I would say I didn't really learn how to be a product manager from other product managers, except that person who was there for 2 months. I mostly learned from this engineering team, like how to work well with them. I asked them a lot of questions. Like I was really upfront about, I don't know this thing, and I would just ask them to talk me through it. They were really supportive.
What difficulties did you encounter during your 2 years?
Yeah, it's difficult. Working in healthcare was really frustrating, it turned out. I think everybody came into it super bright-eyed and we can change healthcare, but it's just really highly regulated. So it's really hard to make change. It was like super discouraging. As I was there, I was like, here are all my ideas. Let's do them. I was chipping away at ideas. The company was struggling. They had grown. They had an early batch of customers that had worked out and then like struggling to grow in that same area. Now I think they're doing much better. They brought in consultants who like came in and were like telling us what to do, and their ideas were the same as my ideas, but they're like getting there, but they don't have to actually execute on them. They just come in and recommend them. So that to me, it was hard to make progress there. And because the company was at this stagnation period for the time I was there, I didn't feel like I was learning much about the business and how it was working. it was hard to know if the company was doing well and what we should do. Made it really hard to make decisions in the direction of the greater good. Really. And then personal struggles where it was just a lot of work. I ended up managing a bunch of teams. There was like a lot of drama because I think everyone was feeling lost about the direction of the company. So it made it hard to all go in the same direction.
Why did you ultimately leave?
I didn't feel I was learning about how the business was working, which I was disappointed in. And then I was frustrated with healthcare. And then also just without this personal, I feel like I was able to learn and get good at product really quickly there, which I loved, but there wasn't a growth opportunity because the business wasn't growing. And so I was like, I'll just be doing the same thing with all of the overhead of the internal drama that was happening. So I was like, I think it's time to look for something else. And then I was like, okay, I got to get out of healthcare. It's not what I had dreamed of. I wanted to go somewhere that was like higher growth because that seemed like the easiest way for you to grow personally is to be at a company that's growing.
Yeah.
And then I also really wanted to find a manager I could learn from. Those were the two big things I was looking for. I was interested in finance. I didn't have any background in finance, but so I was looking at finance companies because they felt like slightly less regulated. I got introduced to Carta through like a friend of a friend and then met the person who would become my manager there and just loved her. I was like, this is the person I want to be like. And I feel like I could learn a lot from. She's the chief product officer at Carta now, and she is the number one reason I went there.
So talk to me about Carta. It sounds like you have a dream manager, potential for things to be off to the races and have a great start. Is that how it was?
Yeah, my manager was basically leading a new business line that Carta was spinning up. So I joined even though Carta was also around 500 people, but growing much more quickly. And then this business line was smaller. So it was like I think there were 2 PMs on this team and then an operations team. And I think immediately I got a sense of how the business worked, which I loved. And it was just a lot to ramp up on. I was ramping up on both the whole industry that we were working on and how all of these internal teams work. There's so many acronyms I had to learn. I ended up working one of the other PMs who had been there longer, twice a week or at least once a week. He would whiteboard for me how certain parts of he was like, this is how the business works. Or, this is how this person interacts with a product. And that was really helpful. For a while, I was like floating and I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing a good job? That was a tough place to be for the first few months. I like having positive feedback. The hardest thing was feeling, am I being successful for a while in the beginning.
And what do you attribute that to?
There wasn't a structured onboarding process, really. It was like, you're here to do this, which I think is really common at almost all like companies that are moving quickly. There isn't a way to know if you're doing well. So just not being any structure, it takes a while to ramp up to do projects. Once I started projects, I would get feedback and that was helpful. So then I started feeling like after, I don't know, 5 months or so that I was actually doing a good job at the job.
And that's ironic because that's about the time COVID started.
Yeah. When I first joined Carta, I traveled a lot with my manager and with our PM team. In the 5 months before COVID, I went on 10 business trips.
Were you going to client sites, to different Carta offices?
Just at different Carta offices. We were based in San Francisco, building with a team operations team in New Jersey. Carta had 9 offices. We would go to Seattle, New York, and New Jersey often.
What happened when COVID hit? How did that affect your time at the business?
We didn't travel. I had just moved in with my boyfriend. We moved in February 1st. Then I went on a 2-week business trips, 2 more weeks, and COVID. We're working out of our 1-bedroom apartment on opposite sides of the kitchen table. It was okay. I like working from home, but I would be leading a meeting and people would be like, is there someone talking in the background? And I'm like, yes. I live in a house with another.
Yeah, aren't the rest of you dealing with this too? What do you mean?
The logistics were interesting from a work perspective. I had been in meetings all the time, so it was okay. We already had offices in different parts of the country, so a lot of our meetings would have Zoom calls. So from that perspective, it was not too hard. They ended up downsizing in April, and my team quickly, they reforecasted, and then we're like, oh no, we have too many people. They also are very dependent on early stage business growth. And they got worried about what that would look like.
Sure.
My team was heavily affected. I think I had 9 or 10 people who were on my engineering team and half got let go. So
wow.
It was really big. My manager let me know it was going to happen. So I was a little bit mentally prepared, but I think not, you're not really emotionally prepared and
Sure.
it's hard to know how to
Yeah.
react. But I tried to do a lot to keep the people who were staying, bring them together and try to create a team atmosphere. But it was emotionally a hard time. And I
Sure.
hadn't been in that situation before where logically it makes sense for the business. Well, these are people's real lives and they depend on
And
these things.
also that period where we thought we were going to die. It was pretty intense. I laugh. It was not funny at that time. It was pretty scary. Was there feelings of survivor guilt or anything that you and that team experienced?
I definitely think we were feeling like a bit guilty. They didn't end up cutting our product team very significantly. For me, it wasn't people in the exact same role
Sure.
as me, which I think would be a little bit different. But definitely some people who had been there for years and working together got let go and some didn't. It was tough for people to stay excited and it's hard to know like where to put the emotions that you're feeling. So I think that there was a lot of processing.
Why did you leave Carta after 3 years?
When I worked at ReadMe, I didn't want to start my own company because I saw how much pressure it is. You end up having people who depend on you. People's real lives are depending on you as a founder. So for a long time, I didn't want to start my own company. And the longer I worked in product, I started working my way up, the more I was like, I don't think I want to follow this product career ladder. I really like building things, but it got more political where I was like, I'd look at my manager and be like, I don't think I want her job in 5 years. So I started just thinking more broadly
You're
about
like,
what I
I'd rather
wanted.
be a CEO.
I don't know. I'm like, I would rather not have the same problems over and over again. I
Yeah.
think I
Well,
felt
and
like
working
when,
for yourself versus working for someone who works for someone who works for someone is a lot.
yeah, I was like, oh, I'm working really hard. I think I can figure this out. I just wasn't feeling excited. I was working on the roadmap for the next year. I could stay here and build all these things. I think they are the right things to build, and I could hire more people on my team. But I'm not feeling energized by doing that. Yeah. And I was like, and that's like ironic because I think if I wanted to do a product, this is the best place I could be. I had good growth opportunities there. Then I've been in this like peer coaching group called Sidebar. And I had told them I wanted to do this. And then at one point someone was like, Ashley, like, why are you hesitating? Like, why are you not doing it? If you keep telling us you want it. The biggest reason was like, I loved my manager so much. I like didn't want to disappoint her.
Oh, wow.
She had gone on maternity leave. So I was like, I'm definitely going to wait until after her maternity leave. But then she came back and I was still hesitating. And then I was like, you know what? I think I need to do it. At Carta, I gave them a ton of notice. I gave them like 3 months
Wow.
because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I am a person who's like 100% into what I'm doing. I liked working at Carta. I couldn't do a good job of working full time at Carta and coming up with what are the next things I want to be doing.
Yeah.
I had tried to do that for a while and I just never made any progress because like everything at Carta would always be urgent. Whereas like the stuff for myself is I'll do it next week or I'm tired or stuff like that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, I gave them a lot of notice and I was like, hopefully I'll be able to like onboard someone else while I'm still here, which didn't happen, but I felt good.
That's on them, not you.
Yeah. I was like, I was able to like document a lot of the stuff I did and make sure that other people had context on it and stuff like that. And yeah, then I jumped off and tried to do my thing.
I think I read one of your LinkedIn posts that you started something before Sundays. So was that the next thing after Carta?
I left Carta. I didn't really relax. The next week I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out what I do. I spent a lot of time researching different things, which now in hindsight, it's probably not the same approach I would take, but I was super broad. I had a bunch of friends who were in Web3 stuff. So I was like, let me go learn about that. And then I was learning about AI. And I think that I spent months learning about these things, having different ideas and like researching, okay, do I understand how this business works? In hindsight, I would take a more active approach where I would experiment more quickly with ideas. For a few months, I also was like, I don't want to think about any Carta related things. I don't want to think about the types of business I've been in. But then I got excited about AI. I spent so long trying to solve all these customer support problems. I feel like AI should be able to do customer support well and do basic actions that like customer support rep should be able to do. So the first thing that I ended up working on was this AI customer support tool. I convinced my co-founder Carson to work on it for a hackathon. We built AI customer service for e-commerce companies where there are like actions like returns and things like that you can trigger. So we got good feedback. And so we were like, okay, let's work on this. I ended up working on that for a couple of months. We hadn't built with AI before and we did get it to work. But as we were doing that, We realized we weren't really strategically well positioned. They were all these companies that already had a lot of data in the space. The more data, the better your AI. We also didn't have distribution into e-commerce companies. So our distribution method was like, I would cold email e-commerce companies or show up at like random D2C consumer goods conferences and talk to people. It was really hard to break into that industry. Realized it wasn't going to work essentially. And then at the same time, I had been looking at following what other people were building, and I saw people building in this like parenting space and just was feeling really jealous. I was like, I wish like I'll build something over there for my next company. I wasn't feeling motivated myself. I like knew that I needed to be the one doing marketing and sales, but I wasn't like doing the things that I knew I needed to do to create this company from scratch, or the few things I knew I needed. There's a bunch I didn't know. As I was doing that, I was really motivated by this parent problem. So as we were closing down the first idea, decided to explore that.
What did it feel like when the customer service AI platform that you were working on, when you were realizing that it was not going to be the end all be all, that you were going to move on from?
I had given myself a timeline to try for at least a year to figure out something. And we weren't at that year point yet. So I was like, there's still time. I definitely felt bad because as I was coming to all these realizations, I was like, why didn't I figure this out to begin with? You need other components to make it a good business. I was naive. I didn't think about the competition or the strategy of other players. I felt it wasn't the smartest move to spend so much time on this. We should have figured out earlier. I had this timeline in my head. What am I going to do differently next time? And then started that Sunday focused on fast customer feedback, try and validate if people will pay me as quickly as possible.
What keeps you up at night as it pertains to your work?
It's a different thing all the time. There's the pace of needing to learn something new. There's always things we can do better. I wake up at night and write notes like, we have to do this thing. Right now, we're trying to scale. My brain is processing. What are things someone else can be in charge of? What does it look like for that to happen? The interesting thing about starting your own company is it's something new every time. It's not one consistent thing where I'm like, oh, 3 months ago, I was worried about this thing and I'm still worried about it today. 3 days ago, I started worrying about this and I haven't figured it out yet. It changes all the time.
When I asked you to be on this podcast, when you heard the name and read the description, what made you go, yeah, that resonates with me? Why did you feel like you'd be a good fit?
Yeah, especially over the last 2 years of building Sundays, it's so clear that the stories we read are fake and polished. When you read stories of people's careers, successful businesses, those stories are written for people to read them. So they're like smoothed out and they jump to like the exciting and the happy parts. And they don't talk about the day to day of what it's really. Yeah, I was excited about what you're doing, about talking about what's real for people in their careers and building businesses.
The book that keeps coming back, Sharing the Real Truth, is Shoe Dog. Have you read that? Oh my gosh. Like I find it really hard to read a book that matches how I felt. I remember like it was one summer I was going for runs and I just wanted to go for another run so I could keep listening to the book. And the reason why I love it so much is because Nike is incredibly successful, right? Everyone knows Nike, but they had such a journey. They were not doing well for so long. It's a more accurate depiction of doing well, is that you have this journey and it is indeed a journey and it might take a very long time. That can feel frustrating. You see the end, you know where you want to go in theory, and all good things take time. Looking at your LinkedIn, I create an outline, a timeline of what everything looks like and putting that together and talking to you now, just being completely honest and candid. It sounds fine. It doesn't sound like you've had this, oh my gosh, tumultuous experience. And I think that's the point. It doesn't have to be so tumultuous for you to feel like you're not doing as well as you wanted to do or thought you would be doing. That people would look at you and be like, oh, your career seems fine. What are you complaining about? Like, why do you have anything to say? Because I have feelings. And my feelings were, I thought I would be doing this, or I thought I would be doing better. I just thought I would be feeling better about all of it.
Yeah, you thought it would feel different when you
right. And I'm a human, and my feelings are not matching the feelings I wanted to have, and that's really important. And basically, all this to say is that I'm validating that it's tough. you can work hard and have something that looks okay on paper, but in actuality, you just feel like, ugh, there aren't even necessarily words. It's just like a sound effect. Ugh. I want to be doing better, and I want to be somewhere else, whether it be now or 5 years ago, how that felt. There's truth to that it's a grind. How do you define success?
Feeling challenged and energized by work and having time to spend with family and friends.
What was your dream job as a
Preschooler, probably a doctor.
Do you have a path not taken?
Something that would be really fun would be like being an architect or like an interior designer and getting to design spaces.
What 3 words would you use to describe your career?
3 words. I like the word winding. I'm trying a bunch of different things. Fun. I have been having fun learning in these places. Growth.
I have 3 labels I'd like you to apply to 3 jobs. Love, ultimate fun, skip.
I love my job right now. And then my first job at ReadMe was my ultimate fun job because it was an early stage company and I wasn't a founder. I didn't have as much pressure of like how to make the business work. And I got to build friendships with all those people. I would probably skip the job at Collective if I had to skip one, even though I learned a lot. It was like high drama period. I wasn't there as long because of that.
If you could face your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
20 years old was when I was at this like stomach issues because I couldn't figure out my life. Right. I would tell myself to relax. You will figure it out, but also realize that you don't have to be on a linear path. All of these disparate experiences are what make you unique. Over time, you start to pull those together into more meaningful things and give you a lot of skills to handle things in different areas. I would tell myself to not be looking for this like one path, just look for where you're learning the most.
Where did that pressure come from? Was it exclusively from yourself? Was it from others or just the general pressures we all feel as we're of that age and trying to sort through life?
I think it came from myself. My parents had high expectations, but they didn't define what that meant. They just expected success. I think it's looking at society and being like, this is what success means and absorbing that.
Thank you so much for your time and we'll chat soon.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Effing Up. I'm your host, Deanne Reinert. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe on the platform you use to listen to podcasts. Share Effing Up with others, post about it on social media, and or leave a rating and review. Until next time, count your perceived failures as part of your path to success. After all, we're all effing up.